What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the ITP Paladin. Not really changing my appearance, but I got some new logos and emotes on my Twitch stream, so be sure to check that out at the end of it. This video, wow, selling out early. Anyway, so this video, I really wish I could have done it a little bit earlier, but on top of everything, kind of having a very weird thing going on today, very bad description. I can't speak. I just got over being sick recently, so I'm still formulating myself. It's just not helping. It's just not helping. But here's some development news that I think we could all get behind. Overwatch 2. It finally has some information that we could all work on. Let me see if I can move my camera. There we go. So essentially, if you guys didn't know, sure you didn't, Overwatch had their grand finals for the Overwatch League, and they were supposed to be playing their matchups that evening, or this evening rather, depending on when you watch this, that they were playing on Overwatch 2's engine. Like, they were playing Overwatch 2 for their final grand finals match to basically be an introduction, that people would watch it and be like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool. So, I've been pretty skeptical when it came to Overwatch 2, for a lot of reasons, but I will forego those reasons for a minute because they mentioned in this particular thing that we would see two specific hero reworks, and obviously, as you can see, one of them is Bastion. The other is Sombra. They're going to have reworks, and it is also revealed in like an interview that they had that more heroes like damage, healing, tank, all of them are going to be reworked. The maps are going to be reworked. Everything is going to be reworked for this game. So obviously they're not doing nothing, which is kind of what was one of my concerns. And I did watch another video where someone was going into another topic of why 5v5 was good, and that's another topic for, again, another video. But for now, we're going to cover the hero, updates that they decided to do. So out of the reworks, I'll just quickly shoot over on some of the stuff that's current up to date. So Bastion right now is a DPS hero that is kind of, still can't say it, kind of controversial to the point where he's kind of like in a hard to put state. His abilities are hard to kind of get by. Like, Bastion is kind of hard to play around on certain instances. But the thing is that in lower ranks he's overpowered, but in higher ranks he's just don't bother playing him. That's kind of like one of the big things going on right now. So let me just give a rundown of what his basic abilities are and what he's like. He is a 200 HP hero with 100 armor in total, giving him effective a total of 300 hit points with 100 armor. He had a passive ability, meaning something that was active at every time, that he took a damage reduction at 20% when he was in a transformed state, rather not walking around on 2 feet. His first configuration, which is the one he's on 2 feet, he had his normal fire mode, which was dealing like 20 damage per bullet at a firing rate of 8 rounds per second with 35 ammo, and it took 2 seconds to reload. And then he had his ability starting with a configuration into Sentry mode, where he was a stationary powerhouse, that's the key word, and he dealt a lot of damage. 300 ammo, fired at 35 rounds per second with 15 damage per bullet. Doesn't sound like a lot off paper, but I could promise you it was enough to wipe a team if you knew how to, properly shoot, and the team was a bunch of invalids. It took 2 seconds to reload, and it basically made you immobile. You couldn't move. He had a self-repair ability that healed 90 HP per second and had a recharge time when it finished of 7 seconds to get up to full, and a duration of up to 3.3 seconds, and a cooldown of 1 second when you needed to go back and forth between. Lastly was reconfiguration, where you between they threw me off with this. I didn't even know that's considered an ability. But the configuration is called under reconfiguration, where if you're in Sentry, it takes 1 second to get into, or 1 second from recon to Sentry, and half a second from Sentry to recon. Basically, it's faster to get out of your tank mode than it is to get into it. And then configuration tank would be his ultimate ability, where he had dealt 205 direct hit damage and 145 splash damage at a firing rate of 1 round per second, and it took 1.5 seconds to deploy and 8 seconds in total. So basically, now that we have an understanding of what his rootkit was, and if you need to go back on that, by all means, but I just encourage you to look on the website. First, we're going to cover like some of the things that changed. First and foremost, in fact, let's just go from top to bottom. I don't know if you guys can see. No, you can't see it. So right off the bat, configuration recon. His firing rate, which would be his normal mode, by the way, his firing rate is reduced by 50%, so he has a slower firing rate. If I recall correctly, that was 8 rounds per second, so now it's 4 rounds per second. His damage fall off is increased to be more accurate at long range, and his weapon spread is reduced to 0, meaning that he's basically a semi-automatic sniper firing without the scope. Overall, I don't think that's necessarily a bad change, especially if they're keeping the normal damage rate and the damage fall off is being increased. So I think that's not too bad considering. Configuration into sentry mode. You can now move while firing, but at reduced movement speed. They didn't mention the actual specifics because they usually go into percentage. But I figure that if they do that, they have to do it by like 40% movement speed. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. I don't really know. But the faster he moves, the more broken the ability. So we'll see what they plan on doing that. Weapon has unlimited ammo in that state, and weapon damage is reduced by 40%. And which is actually pretty huge because that ability had a lot of damage and a lot of damage potential. So to be able to move not only gives him survivability, but it makes it so much better for him to be able to like move around and do stuff pretty decently, actually. I mean, so far this doesn't seem so broken, but we'd be surprised. His ultimate ability is Configuration Artillery, where in artillery mode, he locks into the ground, like he normally does with his, his sentry mode, and unleashes a powerful long-range artillery strike, and you manually target 3 locations and strike anywhere you want, which is similar to Doomfist's ultimate. Reconfigure. Bastion Ultimates. Transformation between 2 primary combat modes is now an 8-second duration and a 10-second cooldown. So that actually balances out the sentry mode, saying that you can only be in that mode for 8 seconds, which is also why it has unlimited ammo, because for 8 seconds, you're going to be able to shoot anything you want in line of sight. And then a 10-second cooldown, that balances the ability. That's kind of similar to what I would imagine I would have balanced him at before, but at the same time, I didn't actually have kind of a concept or an ability that would kind of break him or make him, so either way. Self-repair, as we said, removed, so nothing to cover on there. His self-repair was kind of a way for him to self-sustain when he was immobile. Now they're kind of flip-flopping it, so his survival should be a lot easier until he hits ultimate, in which case that should honestly add to his survivability. Finally, a tactical grenade, which is an off ability. He shoots a tactical grenade that detonates after a short delay and knocks back any enemies that it strikes. It can bounce off walls but sticks to enemies and floors, and the grenade explodes shortly after they stick to an enemy or floor. So overall, this rework doesn't seem that bad. In fact, actually, this is a pretty decent rework. I'm not even gonna lie. It's really good. It's really good. I'm not gonna say it's a good rework or that it's like the best that they could do. Again, we don't know the exact like stuff aside from the cooldown times and some mentions of percentages and all that, but until we get more specifics about like damage output on some of these abilities and other percentages and such, it's hard to say whether or not this will make him stronger, weaker. Maybe it doesn't do anything. Maybe he still remains in the spot that he's in. It just changes up how he plays, but he stays in the low ranks, he's overpowered, and high ranks, he's weak and basically unplayable, so we'll figure that out. However, the next one to come into play comes Sombra, and Sombra, jeez. So Sombra is a little confusing to me for some reason, but I think if I read through it along with you guys, it'll make more sense. So first and foremost, she has a passive ability. Let me go back, because I have the stats right here so I can compare like 1 for 1, however everything goes. So nothing about her changes. She has 200 HP. I think that her opportunist still... Yeah, I think they changed her opportunist fully. I'm not 100% sure if they added this portion to the opportunist, or if this is like full on replacing it. But her current passive ability is that an enemy below 100% health, she can see the health bar, and if they're below 50, she could see the silhouette through walls. And her teammates don't share the vision. It's up to the Sombra player to communicate it. So in this instance, Opportunist is just going to do 50% more damage to hack targets, and Hack is going to have that wall hack addition to it. Machine Pistol, her damage is reduced from 8 to 7, effectively meaning that she's going to do less damage, but her spread is reduced by 20%, meaning that she'll be more accurate. So that doesn't seem like a very bad change, and I like it. Her ultimate EMP has a removed effect of no longer dealing additional shield-specific damage. In instances, there was actually 2 heroes with shields that I could mention, Zarya and Zenyatta. In fact, you know what? We'll mention Symmetra as well. All 3 of them have shields. So when you EMP, they would lose shields completely, and they would be reduced to their health for the duration of how long it took for their shields to regenerate. So it no longer deals that specific shield damage, but it deals 40% of enemies' current HP, which means that, essentially speaking, all heroes are now affected, not just shield-based ones. And I think that's not a bad change to the ability. It gives her the ability to not just rely solely on the team to pick up, that she can do stuff and essentially weaken the team in more ways than just removing their abilities, which was pretty strong, but wow. We're just going to have to wait and see, honestly. Same thing with Bastion. Translocator, there is no changes, but Hack has a huge change to it. So initially speaking, her Hack ability... it had the ability to interrupt channeled effects, including ultimates, and prevent the activation of abilities, including a passive. Hacked enemies also have their health bar and ultimate status revealed for a longer duration, and hacked health packs respawn at a faster rate. So I don't think that they changed... Oh! Okay, so they did change that. I just noticed it now, too. So cooldown is reduced from 8 to 3 seconds, meaning she could hack more often. The duration is increased to 8 seconds for hack total, because I think it was 5 seconds at one point. Am I right? 8-second cooldown. Yep, 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Let me see, where are you? Ability unlock duration, 5 seconds, 1 second. Okay, so ability lock duration reduced from 5 seconds to 1 second, so that means that they could use their abilities in 1 second. But now they're visible through walls for 8 seconds, and cooldown is no longer halved when hacking health packs, because now it's reduced to 3 seconds, and health pack duration reduced from 60 to 30 seconds. So basically... it means that the health pack won't be hacked as long, which I think that's actually a good improvement. So far, nothing about these hacks doesn't seem any bad. In fact, actually, that makes her a little bit easier to manage. Some of the stuff right now is very hard to kind of pinpoint her and try to, like, nail her down when playing against. It's very hard to play against her, especially when it's a very good Sombra. So this makes it a little bit more manageable, where it doesn't necessarily take away her effectiveness. It just redistributes it into a different method that can kind of make it easier to face off against her, but still make her a nuisance. It's really weird to kind of go over, and I that's not my forte. I'm not a Sombra main, so I won't actually argue this case with anybody. But it feels to me like it would actually make it not just easier to play her, but play against her. So we'll go from that. Finally is her stealth ability, which kept her invisible, and she couldn't do anything but run and throw her translocator. Now she has a fade in time reduced by 50%, meaning like when she does it, it's halved. Detection radius increased to 4 meters, so people would actually be able to detect her easier. So this is kind of going in play with what I previously mentioned. And hack no longer removes stealth, but Sombra becomes briefly visible while hacking. So once again, it sounds like it's easier to counterplay her without taking away her effectiveness. It's weird. It's very weird, but I'm not hating on it. And honestly, again, until we get more specifics, it seems that she's actually more detailed than Bastion. So for this instance, it's kind of a little easier to gauge her. I would say that this improvement is pretty high up there. Like, it's actually a really good improvement, and I don't hate it at all. Again, it seems like it might be easier to counterplay while still keeping her effective. So we'll only know when we're able to do it. We're only able to do what we can do. So we'll figure out when the game comes in. We'll see if it's overpowered. Hopefully they'll have PTR balance changes and all that. And this kind of makes me happier that Overwatch 2 doesn't seem as bad as it seemed like it was going to be. It seems actually pretty decent. So I can't even lie about that. Well, that is unfortunately all my time for right now. As I said, this has been a very complex day. So I'm going to leave now. But overall, my opinion of this is actually pretty decent. I don't hate it at all. It is 2 very good reworks, and there's more on the way. I'm kind of myself personally hoping that they will kind of reveal like a soldier rework on what they plan to do to incentivize him. Because where he's at is not necessarily a bad state. He doesn't need a buff. He doesn't need a nerf. I think he just needs a quality of life change to incentivize his kit to be better. It's again very hard, and maybe I talked about it on a previous video, so I would suggest actually doing that. I'll put a link down below and we'll go from that. But other than that, I'm calling it here. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out my Twitch again, where I had some new stuff like my emotes and my profile image. I had to think about that for a minute. Have a good night. I'll see you the next time.